Welcome to this week's edition of Ask an MS Expert. I'm Jon Strum, and I'm the host of the Real Talk MS podcast. Each week, Real Talk MS reaches thousands of people in more than 100 countries around the world with the news that people affected by MS need to know. My wife, Jean, lived with progressive MS for 23 years, so I've had a front row seat experiencing all the ways that MS can impact a family. I'm a past member of the International Progressive MS Alliance Scientific Steering Committee. Currently, I'm a district activist leader and trustee for the National MS Society, and I chair the Society's California Government Relations Advisory Committee. The MS Society's Ask an MS Expert webcast is designed to give us a place for the MS community to connect and to connect you with MS experts who are ready to answer your questions on the topics that impact people affected by MS every day. Please feel free to post your comments and questions on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch. MS navigators are online throughout today's program, answering questions and connecting you to resources. For a lot of people, the new year represents a fresh start and a new opportunity to create healthy habits. Most of us have learned that resolutions are much easier to make than to keep. And after just a few months, we often find ourselves settling back into the same old patterns, making the same choices that we always have. Well, today we're talking with Dr. Brooks Wingo about how we can change our behavior and stick to our goals throughout the year. Dr. Wingo is an associate professor at the University of Alabama, Birmingham in the Department of Occupational Therapy, and she's the principal investigator and director of the Health Behavior and Disability Lab. Welcome, Dr. Wingo. Thanks for being with us today.
John, thanks for having me.
Why do people make resolutions? And why does it seem like the start of a new year is the only time that we can decide to make changes and improvements in our lives?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we all tell ourselves we're not going to make resolutions, and then we do anyway. I think it's just the first of the year just seems like a fresh start, right? So especially through holidays, a lot of times even starting from like Halloween in October, all the way through New Year's in January, a lot of times we feel like we just eat nonstop. A lot of us might drink nonstop. Our schedules have gotten all out of whack with family and parties and whatnot. So our exercise and physical activity routine might be off, may not be sleeping well. And so as everything kind of starts to get back into a normal groove, a lot of times I think we just feel like we need a fresh start. And so what better way to do that than January 1st, right? This is the year.
What are some of the common goals that people choose for themselves?
So I think especially when you're thinking about New Year's, a lot of people, this is the year they're going to lose that weight, right? Going to start eating healthier, going to start exercising more. Some people decide they're going to stop smoking or stop drinking quite so much, especially through January. So really a lot of health related goals. I think there's also a good number of people who probably set financial goals or kind of just life goals in general. But I think health and well-being are probably some of the most popular goals that we see set, especially in January.
Physical and emotional wellness tend to be things that everyone strives for. How important is overall wellness for people who are living with MS?
Oh, I think it's very, very important. I think especially in the last 10 to 15 years, there's been a lot of really good new research coming to light that really shows, especially physical activity. The physical activity literature seems to be a little bit more well-developed than diet. So I look a lot at diet and its relationship with MS symptoms and outcomes. And I think diet is coming along. We're getting there with some really good data, but physical activity already has a really, really good database to suggest that, physical activity of any sort really can help with, it decreases, pain, fatigue, but it can also help with mood, cognitive function even. So physical activity, I think, is huge for MS.
I mentioned this a moment ago. Resolutions are always accompanied by the very best of intentions, but after a couple of months, it can be a struggle to change behavior and keep those commitments. Why is it so difficult to stick to a new behavior over the long term?
That's a great question. So I think for starters, especially when you're thinking about a resolution. So if you're thinking about the change in terms of a resolution, a lot of times it doesn't stick because it's just kind of vague. I'm going to do this year, right? This is the year I lose the weight. Unless you really sit down and think about goals and what is losing weight, let's say, for example, what does that look like? Do you want to lose 5 pounds? Do you want to lose 50 pounds, right? So kind of getting a better idea of what we want to do, and then having a really good action plan and backup plan for how we're going to get there. So I think a lot of times we are not successful in meeting our resolutions because we don't actually have a really good plan for them. The other thing to consider, though, is so many of the behaviors that we're thinking about. So again, diet, exercise, if you're thinking about smoking, things like that. These are things that our environment isn't really conducive to changing these behaviors a lot of times. So if I'm, working late, if I'm not feeling great, I just want to reach for something quick and easy to eat. And typically quick and easy does not equal healthy. It equals, a Big Mac or a Whopper a lot of times, or ice cream or something like that. So the environment and the culture that we live in really pushes, hard work, long hours, little sleep, and fast, go. It doesn't really set us up for very successful wellness as far as lots of rest, low stress, exercise, and physical activity. So I think a combination of, not being really well prepared and having a good action plan and being in an environment that's kind of working against us. That's a lot of the reasons why we see so many people by February start to fall off that resolution train.
Do you have some tips that you might be able to share with us to make it easier to change old habits and adopt some new ones?
Yes, lots of tips. So the biggest thing I tell people is the first step is to really know your expectations. So like I mentioned, do you want to lose 5 pounds? Do you want to lose 50 pounds? What do you want to get out of this? And also really think about why. Why do you want to do this? Why now? Right? So is it just January and you just feel like you should be making a resolution? Or are you really in a frame of mind where you feel like this is going to be successful? So know what you want to get out of it and know why. And the reason these two things are so important, those are going to be your motivators, so that when you start feeling bad and you don't want to eat that healthy food, you don't want to go to the gym, these are going to be the things that you can fall back on that kind of help motivate you to get started back in to that behavior pattern. So knowing what you want to do and why, and then setting some really good goals. So oftentimes we have people work through some goal setting that we call like the SMART goal setting. So things that are very specific, measurable, attainable, but also realistic and time bound. And so as you're working through these, we have people typically set up goals. And then the third thing that's really important is to have a plan. And like I mentioned earlier, have a plan and a backup plan. So if sometimes it's really good to kind of think back in the past. Most of us have tried to change our diet at some point in the past, right? So look back on those times and say, what worked really well and what didn't work? What was it that got me off base with my previous attempts? Because that thing, whatever that thing is that gets you off track, probably is going to happen again. So if you can be aware of it and know it when it's coming up, you can plan ahead for it. So we always tell people have a plan A, plan B, plan C, especially for those things that will trip you up.
When you're working on changing old habits, how important is it to have support from a family member or a friend? What can they really help with?
So social support is probably one of the key factors in behavior change. So we know across the board, regardless of the behavior, people who have a good support system around that behavior change are going to be more successful changing their behaviors. So you think about, again, you're looking at something like diet or exercise, having that buddy that will go to the gym with you when you're not really feeling like going to the gym, or having that buddy that will say, I know you really want to go out for a margarita, but let's go for a walk instead. Or maybe let's do both. We can have the margarita, but only after the walk. So, things like that, social support, somebody who is either going through it with you or has been through it before, or just really knows you, to know what your triggers are for getting off track and help you kind of get back on track.
I think you actually started answering this question a couple of moments ago. Gabby told us that she was diagnosed with MS last year. She wants to incorporate more healthy habits into her lifestyle this year. She plans to increase her exercise and eat a healthier diet. And Gabby wants to know whether there's evidence that these kinds of changes are beneficial for someone with MS.
Absolutely, yes. There is evidence to support physical activity and diet specifically. So we know that physical activity has been associated with decreased depression, improved mood, cognitive function, decreases in pain and fatigue. Diet, like I mentioned earlier, we're a little bit newer in the diet research, but even with what we have so far, we haven't done a lot of intervention studies, meaning we haven't got a lot of data where we put people on a diet and see what happens. But just when you survey people with MS across the board and you kind of look at who who's faring better or not faring better, diet looks to be potentially a big component of who's doing really well. Specifically, again, pain and fatigue, potentially with some cognitive cognition as well. The other thing with diet and exercise too is even if it's not directly impacting the MS, it will directly be impacting things like high blood pressure and diabetes. And so what we're also finding is people who have high blood pressure, diabetes, kind of these obesity, part of these kind of more metabolic characteristics, their MS outcomes are worse. So by improving or preventing high blood pressure and type 2 diabetes, we may actually be improving the MS outcomes as well. We're not sure yet, but that's what we're looking into.
Gabby is also wondering, how does she begin a consistent exercise program?
Consistent exercise program. So I think with any behavior change, my recommendation is always start small. So many of us, especially if we are going to do this January 1st, we go out and we download the marathon training and we go keto and then we go gluten-free keto and we just do everything. I think starting small is the best way, especially with something like exercise, where there could be some implications from fatigue, especially. You don't want to go out and do too much too soon and have that, leaving you so fatigued that you can't do anything then for a week. So starting very small and gradually building up as you feel you're comfortable. So it's, not uncommon. I always tell people start from your baseline. So from where you are now. So if let's say you are completely sedentary now, you don't exercise at all, a 10-minute walk might be perfectly, that's a great way to get started. That's a good small step. And so you could do 10 minutes every day. You could do 10-minute walk 3 times a week. And then when you feel comfortable with that, then you can go up to 15 and then up to 20. And so you kind of gradually build into it. That's better for success. Success breeds success. So if you feel good about yourself after you do that walk, you're more likely to go do it again. If you try to go run 6 miles, then you might not feel so good. And chances are you probably aren't going to want to do it again.
I also heard you mention this a couple of moments ago, but I think it probably bears repeating. Can you talk a little bit about how healthy habits can impact someone's mental health?
Oh, yes. So we know there is a lot of literature that supports healthy habits, again, specifically physical activity and healthy diet. They're very strongly associated with depression and overall mood. They are also linked more and more now with cognitive decline and cognitive disability. So, a little bit different from the mental health aspects, but definitely mood is made a lot better, especially with physical activity, getting out and burning some calories and kind of, burning off. A lot of times you feel like you feel better afterwards, and you actually do. Your body's responding in a positive way. So it's great for mental health.
We heard from Bryce, who said he really wants to quit smoking this year. He says he knows that smoking can negatively affect his MS, and he's tried to quit before, but he hasn't been successful. Bryce is wondering why it's so difficult to change this behavior.
Yeah, smoking is a terribly difficult behavior to change, and for a lot of reasons, right? So it's an addictive substance. You've got the actual addiction to the nicotine, but you also have, again, potentially environmental impacts. So, if your friends smoke, your family members smoke, you're around it a lot, that's going to be difficult to change. So even if you're able to give it up for a little while, if you get stressed or something like that, you're more likely to go back to smoking if you're surrounded by other people who smoke. So the environment is definitely a big key. Having a social support network that encourages you to quit smoking rather than discouraging is really, really important. But behavior in general, we kind of think of it as it's a process. You don't wake up one morning and suddenly you're a non-smoker. You don't wake up one morning and you're a runner and a dieter, right? Like, it takes time. And part of the process is the relapse process. And so, depending on the behavior, it might take people, a while, sometimes several years, to really get into a good, behavior pattern where you either gotten rid of a behavior you don't want or brought in a new behavior that you did want. It can take some time. It also takes time to find what works for you, right? So diet, exercise, smoking cessation, there's 100 ways to do any of these. And the one that works for you is the one that's best. So there's no one right way to quit smoking. There's no one right way to start exercising or anything. You have to find what works for you. And so a lot of times until you found that really good plan and that really good backup plan, relapse is going to be part of that behavior process. So I just encourage people to remember behavior change is a process. It's not overnight. And going backwards a little bit in the process is part of it. So that's part of moving forward, is every once in a while taking a step back.
To your point, Bryce says he's been trying to quit smoking for 2 years now, and he wants to know how long should it take to change a behavior?
So that's a hard one to say. I think a lot of people get fixated on this, is it 28 days to form a new behavior or something? That really is not, there's not a ton of literature to really support that, especially when it is something like smoking. The other thing I would say to consider is, how long have you been doing this? So if you've been smoking for 6 months, it's probably going to be a little bit easier to give up than someone who's been smoking for, say, 20 years. If you've been smoking for 20 years or, however long, it's going to take a little while. It could take 6, 12 months. And again, it could take multiple relapses before you get into that right place. So there's really no good one answer of how long it takes to change the behavior, because it's going to be different based on the situation, based on the behavior, based on the person. But again, I encourage you just to think it's a process. Some people will say that some behaviors, especially, smoking, sometimes alcohol, things like this, they will forever be working on changing those, right? So there's some behaviors that we just really form a habit, and it's just what we do. It's just our routine. There are other behaviors that just kind of plague us, and it will always be a conscious decision of this, I need not to do this. I don't need to do this. I'm not going to do this. And so those behaviors like smoking is going to take a little bit longer.
Aisha told us that she heard you have a better chance of sticking to a new behavior if you use SMART goals. Can you tell us what SMART goals are and how they can be helpful?
Absolutely. SMART goals. SMART is an acronym that we use to help people set goals. So, for example, let's use, I'm going to lose weight this year, right? So SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. So specific is just that. You want to make your goal specific. So rather than saying, I'm going to lose weight this year, tell me how much you want to lose. What's your goal weight? Now, I'll throw this out here as well. When it comes to weight loss, I think it's important that we set goal weights or whatnot, but we also look at the behavior, because sometimes the scale's not going to move, despite our best efforts. The behavior is pretty well under our control. So rather than saying I'm going to lose 50 pounds this year, say maybe I'm going to start eating more fruits and vegetables this year. Again, it's behavior, and it's behavior specific. Measurable is you want to be able to give yourself some benchmark as to whether or not you actually met your goal. So again, I'm going to eat at least 5 servings of fruits and vegetables every day. That's very specific. It's very measurable. You also want to think about the A and the R as attainable and realistic or relevant. These two come to, is it physically possible for me to do this? Am I physically able to run a marathon if that's my goal? Or should I be shooting for something a little bit more realistic, right? So if I've got 3 months and I'm trying to lose 50 pounds in 3 months, that's not very realistic. It's not very attainable, at least in a healthy manner. So, doing things that are more attainable, looking and seeing. The other thing to think about here with the relevance is, does it work for me right now? So I really want to lose weight, but I'm in the middle of a really high stress situation. The other thing is, sometimes you have to look at, there's multiple behaviors. So do you need to say quit smoking before you try to lose weight? Because we know that when people stop smoking, a lot of times they gain weight. And so, is it really achievable for me in my current state that this is the goal that I need to work on? And then the T is time bound. You want to give yourself a time frame. So again, you have a good measure of how much you're meeting your goal, how well you're meeting your goal. So, I'm going to eat 5 servings of fruits and vegetables at least 5 days a week for the next 3 months. That's a really smart goal, because I know exactly if I've met it or not.
One of the big challenges of incorporating a new lifestyle change is finding the motivation to start and then maintaining that motivation over time. What are some strategies or tips for getting motivated and staying motivated?
Yes, and I think getting motivated is typically easier than staying motivated. That's the key. So this is where social support really comes in helpful. Having that buddy that says, I know you're tired, but we got to go do our walk. Or I know you want that margarita. We can have it after the walk. That's where social support really, really helps. Also, though, again, having good goals set and having that expectation. So going back to why are you doing this? What do you want to achieve out of it? Because if you look at what you want to achieve and why, sometimes that brings us back to our motivators. So I want to lose weight. That's great. I don't want to go to the gym today. I know that's part of it. But if I'm losing weight because I want to be able to play with my grandkids and I want to be really active and I want to have a longer life, I want to have less pain, that's a little bit more motivating. So if you have those expectations of why you're doing this and you write them down so that you can see them, you can go back to them when you're feeling a little, struggling with your motivation to get back on track.
What's the best way to monitor your progress to stay on track? Are there any useful apps for that?
Absolutely. Apps are great. So I will say apps are great. There's several that are free. There's a MyFitnessPal. I think it's My Calorie Counter. Those are really good things for diet behaviors and physical activity behaviors. But there's also some habit trackers. So if you are trying to quit smoking or trying to, maybe pick up yoga or do some meditation, some mindfulness kind of things every day, there's a couple of really, there's actually a lot of really good habit tracking apps that all you have to do is just go in and say, yep, I did my habit today, or no, I didn't do it today. And so again, it goes back and helps you look. If you're not into smartphones, if you're not into apps, pencil and paper work just as well. Again, you just want to know when you're tracking things, the tracking really becomes helpful when you use it as really a journal. So going back and looking through. So if you go back and you look through and you say, okay, I didn't, maybe I smoked on Tuesday and Thursday of this week, but I didn't smoke any other days. Well, what happened on Tuesday and Thursday? If I don't write down when I smoke and when I didn't smoke, it's harder for me to remember. But at the end of the week, I can go back and look over my week and say, hey, I did something Tuesday and Thursday I smoked. What happened? I'm more able to track my triggers to find out what triggers me to smoke. And then I can try to overlook those or work around those in the future.
Mandy tells us that she's decided she wants to eat healthier this year. And for her, that means more cooking at home and less fast food. But she also says that she works long days, and usually she's really tired when she gets home. And she isn't as familiar as she should be with healthy foods and recipes. So first, how can Mandy make more meals at home while managing her fatigue?
Yes, that's a great question. And a lot of times when we're working with people with MS, fatigue is one of the key barriers to healthy cooking and healthy eating. Because again, typically when we don't feel well, when we're tired, we reach for the easy stuff. And so the key for cooking at home and having home-based meals is making them as easy to grab as the junk food. So part of that is, not having that fast food or junk food in the house, those kind of things. But as far as cooking goes, one thing that really helps a lot of people is meal prep, bulk cooking. So a lot of people will take, typically it's a Sunday afternoon, but it could be any day of the week, depending on your schedule, and go ahead and kind of pre-cook some of the things that you can make for the week. So there's a lot of soups that can be frozen. So you can make a batch of soup on Sunday and eat off of it all week. You can freeze individual packets of it so that you just have to grab one out of the freezer and thaw it out, and then you're good to go. A lot of people will make proteins like chicken or pork. They can make those and go ahead and pre-package it so that throughout the week, all you have to do is grab it and heat it. You don't have to actually prep it and cook it. So that's that's probably one of the best keys to eating, cooking healthy, is to have it done as much ahead of time as you can. The other thing is things like fruits and vegetables. So fruits and vegetables, especially vegetables, can take a long time to prep. And that can play into fatigue. So again, if you're feeling really good one day, go ahead and prep all your vegetables, chop them up, put them in individual bags. And then all you have to do is grab that bag. It's a serving of, grapes or whatever it is, and it's right there ready for you.
Despite best efforts, we know that change can be hard, and some people may want to reach out to a professional for help with changing their behaviors. What type of a professional can help coach or guide someone through this kind of process?
Yeah, that's a great question. So part of it's going to depend on the behavior itself, right? So if you're looking to change diet habits, you're going to be looking for a registered dietitian. If you're looking to change exercise, to get involved with exercise, you want to look for either a personal trainer or someone with a background in exercise science. There are several personal training certificates for folks who are specifically working with people with physical disabilities. So if you've got gait impairment, or you do have problems, say, with balance or spasticity, things like that, there are personal trainers and exercise scientists out there that really focus on that. And so that's a great way of adapting an exercise program for people who have MS. If you're looking at smoking, alcohol, any kind of substance abuse, really a psychologist is typically going to be who you're going to go to. There's a lot of new health coaching, so to speak, that's come up in the last 5 years. It's kind of the hot topic now, is health coaching. And I just say, just to kind of, I don't want to say be careful, but just make sure you're looking in someone's background to see what their, what are their credentials for life coaching or health coaching. Just like you wouldn't give somebody your money to coach you with your money without knowing if they had financial background. Make sure you're not asking, diet advice, smoking cessation advice from somebody unless they have a good background in it.
Well, you've shared a lot of helpful information on a very timely, and for a lot of us, very challenging subject. What would you say are the top 3 takeaways that you'd like our audience to remember?
Yeah, so I think top 3 is, again, know what you want to do, define it really well. If you're looking to change a behavior, make sure you know what you want to do and why. Have a plan, have a backup plan, have a backup to your backup plan. And then the third thing I would say is be flexible. So give yourself grace, have a little flexibility. Relapse is part of the process. Not meeting goals is part of the process. So behavior change is a journey, and just know that you're going to need to be flexible to really see good results.
Well, I want to thank everyone who submitted questions today, and thank you for being with us today, Dr. Wingo.
Thank you for having me.
Before we close, I want to remind you that the National MS Society's MS Navigator team is your best partner when it comes to connecting you to the very best information and resources on living with MS. You can reach an MS Navigator by phone, email, or through the Society's website by chat. For information and resources on MS, please visit the Society's website. You'll find research updates and news, information on connection programs like self-help groups and MS Friends, ways to get involved, and upcoming events that are happening near you. Remember, you can connect with the National MS Society and others affected by MS on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And I hope you'll find time to join me every week on Real Talk MS, where I continue the conversation that we start here. You'll find the Real Talk MS podcast at realtalkms.com, Google Podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. I'd like to thank Dr. Brooks Wingo for joining us today. Please remember that a recording of this webinar is going to be available at the Society's website at nationalmssociety.org/MSexpert, as well as on Facebook and YouTube. I hope you'll join us at this same time for next week's edition of Ask an MS Expert. You can always find our upcoming program topics on the National MS Society's website. And now I have a favor to ask each of you. Getting your feedback on today's program is important. So you'll see a survey pop up in a moment when we close out the program. And if you're watching on Facebook, you'll see a link to that survey pinned to the comments section. On YouTube, you'll find that link in the program description. Completing the survey makes a real difference. The information you provide helps us continuously improve, and it helps shape future programs. The survey takes just 1 minute, so I hope you'll take a minute to fill it out. On behalf of Dr. Brooks Wingo and the National MS Society, I want to thank you once again for joining us. Please stay safe and make healthy choices.